everybody. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV. I'm Al Payton, and it is the first week of the KFC SuperCoach finals for 2022. And all our knockout private leagues start this weekend. So, a huge weekend in head-to-head competition. And also, of course, we're all striving to get as high in the rankings as we can at the by the end of the season. And there are some major issues to deal with this week. It will come down to a lot of people, how many trades you've got left, what your bench cover looks like, and injuries and who you've got on the field. But hopefully we'll try and answer some of those today. I'd certainly like a little bit of guidance because I am contemplating using my last two trades. Is that the dumbest idea in the world? We'll find out from the experts. We've got them all here. So the Phantom has dialed in from the Wehr in South Australia. Obviously, George Hewitt's the one I'm referring to there, Fant, who most probably have in their defence. He's been a fantastic pick all year, but he missed last week. Now he's going to miss this week, and the Blues are saying he's a week-to-week proposition with a back issue. Do we just have to trade him out? What's the trigger for saying he's a must trade?
All afternoon listeners, especially to Dan Batten as well, survived 3 days sleeping in the mud up in Byron Bay. We'll get interesting thoughts from him soon. But George Hewitt, well, we should have traded him to Harry Himmelberg last week, like I did. That's what you should have done now. Well, Tom Stewart back in this week cost you $30K to get to him from George Hewitt. If you got the trades week to week, doesn't sound great. The Blues are going to be in the finals. They want him right for September. So I can see him missing more than just this week. And so if you've got the trade, there's your move there. George Hewitt to Tom Stewart. It's a bit awkward to say, but I wouldn't hesitate making that move if you've got a few in the bank. I wouldn't be trying to hold on to him because he's been a little bit down as well in the past 3 or 4 weeks anyway. I think 3 sub-100 scores in the last month or something like that. So I'll be looking to move him on. And again, you know, Harry Himmelberg, like I did last week, I'm pretty happy with how that played out.
And Bagala, is it as simple as Huey to Stewie? I suppose the only problem is that Hewitt's 536K and Stewart's about 565 or something. So you need to have 30K in the bank to do it in one move. Would you be prepared to use two trades I mean, Tom Stewart does seem like a player I would love to have in my team for the finals. The Cats played 3 of their last 4 at GMHBA Stadium. I think he's averaging 160 there this year. So, I really wouldn't want to be coming up against an opponent who's got him when I don't.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's a massive conundrum because it's the one I've got for myself. And I look at Karen Shanahan's question in the box over there, and same predicament: 3 trades, 0 liquidity, can't get there in one move. So it's quite a conundrum for myself, and I'm sure many coaches out there find themselves in. I'm thinking if Treloar misses, he probably serves as a really important part of this, and I'll probably trade him down to Marshall, which creates the liquidity, and then I'll bump him up to from Huey to Stewie. But that's only if Treloar misses, and he went off with calf awareness. He doesn't have a tear. I mean, he doesn't have any problem there, so there's a big chance he'll play. But I kind of want him to miss because it forces the double trade and it also closes out that Stewart issue. But well done to Phantom last week biting the bullet because I think you didn't have coverage or something like that, so it was probably a good move. But Himmelberg's out of reach for me now, so I'm sitting there going, God, I can't have anyone good. But is Doherty ready to go? Like he's at 529K, like he's averaging 107. He's had a few down weeks recently, but surely against Adelaide, he rewinds it back to his halcyon best because he's got the kick outs, he's taking intercepts, he's an aggressive player, and we should get the chockies on Saturday night. But look, I think off air we spoke, Al, that game when Tommy Stewart got knocked out at Etihad on a Friday night, it was about 15 minutes into the quarter, and I think Stewie was on 40 points or 50 points. He was just absolutely dominating against the Bulldogs. So what do we think is going to happen on Friday night? Probably similar ilk. The ground is 118 metres wide. It's the narrowest one in the comp, and he's going to take heaps of intercepts, and he loves it down there. So I think this year he's averaging about 160 at the Cattery. So look, could he be rusty 4 weeks off? Many things to consider, but I would try and get him. But in my opinion, that extra trade the next 3 weeks thereafter, probably a little bit more than the difference between Stewie and Doc. Like there's so much carnage coming. Like there's injuries every week. There's COVID. There's concussion symptoms, yada, yada. So for me, I'd probably take a Doc or something like that if Treloar doesn't miss and I have to do the second trade. So I don't really want to use a second trade because I think the carnage that will ensue will offset all of that if I keep an extra trade up my sleeve and save 100 points per week in any position on the ground.
Dan Batten, what's your thinking on this? So, I think I agree with Dan Bagala, the difference there between Doherty and Stewart. But then, what's the difference between, say, Jacob Wehr and Doherty? And you're better off just holding the trade and hope Huey comes back next week? Or what's the difference between Wehr and Stewart? That's sort of what I'm thinking, because if I don't make a trade this week, I'm going to have to play Jacob Wehr again. He'll probably score 65 like he has about 6 out of his 8 games. And then people who have Tom Stewart, I'm just absolutely petrified that he'll score 150 against the Dogs on Saturday night. And then, what if Hewitt's out the next week again? So it's driving me nuts. What are you thinking?
Yeah, good to be back from the mud. I was like Patrick Cripps rolling around there at Splendor. A few people were like Tom Green, actually disappearing in the mud, never to be seen again. But yeah, in terms just to your question, I fielded Wehr on the weekend, and he looked like he was going great guns, on track for a ton, and then scored about 10 in the first half. And I'm a bit concerned that he could go missing at stages, and that the difference between Stewart and Wehr could be 100 points. So I've got 3 trades. So the thing is, I think I was talking to you about it in the office yesterday, that I wouldn't go down to 0 trades just to get Stewart. I feel like you can get someone who's a little bit better, or not a little bit better, sorry, but someone who's a little bit cheaper, and save that one trade for an emergency where, like for example, Touchwood, McRae, or someone like that, a very popular ownership player, goes down in the last few weeks, which definitely could happen. We've already seen Oliver and Hewitt in the past few weeks. So, but at the same time, I wouldn't be trusting Hewitt, because they've said he's a week to week. I think Francie Freco tweeted earlier in the week that he's missed plenty of games, at least over 10 with back complaints in recent years. And yeah, I wouldn't be wanting to back him to, I guess, with that, even when he plays with that injury, to be scoring as well as he was at the start of the year. So I think you can get a better option. I think Doherty is one of those who is a little bit cheaper. Obviously, you've got the cash, the guys like Himmelberg. The one thing, if you have got a Wehr on the bench and you've got in your low on trades, you could potentially wait another week and go with Wehr, and then wait for Jordan Dawson to drop down a little bit, and maybe assess the lay of the land in terms of Hewitt being back. I mean, Dawson, he's been tagged the last couple of weeks, but he still hasn't fallen below 80. He's had a fantastic back end of the season, but a break even of 145. He comes up against the Blues this weekend. He may not cop a tag, but at the same time, he has West Coast, North, and Port in the last few weeks. And he's projected to drop another 15K. We'll get him to maybe 550. That might be able to get you within reach of a guy who's probably going to be, for in the last 4 rounds, a top 4 or 5 defender. So, yeah, I think if you wanted to wait a week, then Dawson's probably the one to potentially wait to see if he could drop a bit.
I've got Hewitt, and I've got 21K in the bank. So if you could get under 555, I could probably get there. But yeah, it's going to be running things pretty tight. I mean, the other thing, if you really want to run the gauntlet, is Wehr plays in the first game on Saturday, so you could actually watch him, put the E on him.
Yeah.
And then if he scores 75, you might think, look, I can cop that for another week and see what happens with Hewitt. And if he scores 35, and you can see how your knockout finals are going, that sort of thing, you might have to pull the trigger on a Stewart or trading someone, given that Hewitt doesn't play until Saturday night. So it gives you a tiny bit of breathing space there. But I mean, Phantom, you tried to do a bit of the maths in your Burning Questions article this week, because sort of I'm trying to figure out, so you say you got that 100-point gain from Stewart, doing the Stewart trade this week. Next week, McRae goes down. He's out for 3 weeks, and I've got to cover him with, a rookie off the bench. I'm probably going to end up behind. But it's not that far behind. Maybe if I could survive 1 more week, I'd probably just about break even on that deal. So, I mean, yeah, where do you see the maths on this? Is there, I'm trying to convince myself that maybe it's okay to go down to 0 trades, but am I kidding myself?
Well, it's just the 2-week injury or the multiple injuries. I've got a list for you here. I'll just read them out. Max Gawn, Clayton Oliver, Tom Stewart, Tim English, George Hewitt, Josh Kelly, Zach Butters, Braden Pruce, Lockie Whitfield, Darcy Parish, Aaron Hall, Luke Jackson, Nick Boston, Dustin Martin, Daniel Rich, Caleb Daniel, Dane Zorko, Tom Green, Mason Redmond. Now, that's not a list of the most popular players in KFC SuperCoach. That's a list of the players who have missed 1 or more matches since round 14. That's the past 5 weeks. It's not for the year. That's the past 5 weeks. So if you're out there and ask yourself how many of those guys you do own or you have owned, because we've seen it happen in the final month last year too. I think Tom Stewart went down Lockie Neal went down as well in the run home. So Andy Brayshaw as well got suspended for that 1 week too. So, and like Dan McGulla mentioned before, there was no third wave of Omicron as well sweeping through the country at that point either. So it's going to be some more issues to deal with. And yes, you could get away with it zero trades. I just think the likelihood that you're going to come out down the trade is probably too high for me to exhaust all your trades.
What if you waited one more week and say you got through this week without any more injuries? 3 weeks
Maybe.
to go, is that close enough?
That could be it. I'd be more two is ideal. The final 2 weeks is where I'll probably use my last trade if I don't get anything the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think 4 or doing it this week, I think is probably a little bit too soon. But again, it depends what you're doing. If you're in a do or die KFC SuperCoach League final out there and you need to win, then maybe you do it because you're not going to make the next round if you don't potentially. So all depends on the situation. Ideally, you wouldn't go down to 0 in my book.
I mean, the other factor too that is I don't have an extra primo sort of sitting on the bench like Dan Bagala mentioned, or I think you must still have a Luke Jackson or Isaac Heaney, these sort of guys that you can swing around to fill some holes. I'm purely relying on your Maurice Rioli Jr. types. So if you know one of my the Bont or Luke Parker gets injured or something, I'm in massive trouble. So that is something I'll definitely have to consider. Dan Bagala, what if you traded Hewitt last week or you don't have him? Would you still try and get Tom Stewart? And these kind of guys Jake's asked about here, short and crisp, are the obvious ones that are people aren't enjoying how many points they're scoring. And you think you could get a pretty good gain by getting Tommy Stewart into your team, but would you do it with only 2 trades left?
In those circumstances, I feel like you're replacing a like for like. They're supposedly meant to be premiums, and we're bringing in Tom Stewart. Yes, I know Tom Stewart's got way higher upside, but you are burning trades. And in that great analysis that Phantom just shared, like there's a bunch of household names, like genuine household names that have missed multiple games since round 15 or 14, whatever that round was. So if you extrapolate that data out, we're going to have a breadth of household names that are going to hurt their fingers, do little hamstrings, get knocked out, face into COVID because they went to the restaurant on Collins Street in the city, whatever it happens to be. We'll go to the festival and play in the mud, as they say. But effectively, in my view, like I don't like those moves because Crisp, when the game was on the line against Essendon, what did he do? Went in the corridor, took some really good risky plays and pumped his score up. I just think he's either battling a niggle, trying to keep that record intact, whatever he's trying to do, probably just needs a week off. But Crisp will come good. Like he's good for 90 every week, and it's not the end of the world. It's just I feel like people are just getting this FOMO when Stewie's coming back. FOMO, oh my God, Stewie's coming back. He's coming back. Well, like who's not to say that Bevo doesn't have a plan? It could be Riley West. It could be Hannon. It could be anyone goes forward and plays a role on him, and there's a chance that happens. But I suspect he'll still go 120 plus. But at the end of the day, I'm leaning towards holding after hearing that analysis from Phantom. I don't think I'm going to go and blow my team up just to get Tom Stewart, because even with one trade to the end, I don't think that's enough to get through. And I actually lose a lot of enjoyment when I play SuperCoach when I've got donuts, and that's not what I want to occur in the final weeks, because I enjoy the last month, hopefully win a few leagues on the way home. And I'm going to go against the adage of Vincent Freeman from Gattaca, and I'm actually going to save something for the swim back.
Yeah, I think
there you go.
Tick
it off.
Ticket.
Weekly mention.
It's it's not that much fun when you've just if a player goes out and there's nothing you can do about it, and you've got zeros on the field. I'd have to agree with that. Phantom, what about some suggestions here for maybe passing on Tom Stewart? But given Hewitt is a DPP, could you in fact trade into a midfielder like Callum Mills here? Still a pretty good price, or Jack Steele? He seems to be the one. He's a bit of the similar to the Tom Stewart mold in that not many people have him, even though we all know how good he is, just because he was sort of out injured at the wrong time. But if you could get him as a pod for the last 4 rounds, would that be something you would lean towards?
Yeah, I do like that. Callum Mills 582k. Pretty good buying still, but I do like Jack Steele. We know how good he was. We saw how good he was last week, all coming together again. It all, I guess, still depends if you can get there in the one move. I still think Tom Stewart is the right one for Hewitt in one move, if you can get it done. But you're still paying more for Callum Mills and Jack Steele in the midfield if you were to swing him forward. So I still think if you can do it in one move, Tom Stewart is the go. In terms of ceiling, Callum Mills, we've seen him be so up and down. Jack Steele could rival him, but again, he's a little bit more expensive. So I think Tom Stewart is the play there still.
What about this one, Dan Batten? Nick Dacos and Tom Stewart are down to the cent, the exact same price. So you could have $0 in the bank and you could make that swap. Dacos, last week, actually, that was people saw the SuperCoach Plus article during the week. That was a crazy stat that Collingwood won that game against Essendon, and their overall team total for KFC SuperCoach was the lowest of any team that has won a game this year, and they didn't have anybody score above 90, which is kind of bizarre, really. Essendon had about 7, but didn't help them in the end when they let them take it down the end of the one end of the ground to the other in about 10 seconds. But back to the Nick Dacos. We won't get on down that track. The Nick Dacos question. So he was a little bit down last week, as most of them were. But do you think now? I mean, that just seems like the perfect ships passing in the night. You just jump off one and onto the other.
Yeah, it does sound pretty good. But I mean, you look at Dacos. He scored 160 a week ago. So I mean, he wouldn't be the one I'd be jumping off, I don't think. I mean, Collingwood still have some tough challenges in the second half of the year, but look at his scores in the past 5 weeks: 93, 143, 99, 163, and then obviously the 79 at the weekend. But, I mean, he was still scoring pretty well even at halftime. He was looking like tunning. So, yeah, I probably would hold on to Dacos unless he's your only path to Stewart, because at the moment, Dacos is a pod in itself. Like, he's not in. He's obviously, a lot of people held him who are inactive with their teams, but I reckon the majority of people up the top, he could serve to be quite a good pod in the end of the year. So, yeah, I don't know if he's necessarily worth a trade. I'd almost be looking to offload a Short or a Crisp if you could, in order to get him and holding Dacos, because he could be a nice, unique sort of selection along with Stewart in the back end.
Been seeing a little bit of talk on just on Richmond Twitter, which probably means absolutely nothing, but some agitating for Damien Hardwick to get Jaden Short back into the back line, because he's went from a sort of nice half-back, just beautiful distributor of the ball, to midfielder where he had a bit of an impact, and then the last couple of weeks he's been basically playing almost as a forward pocket, which is actually where he started his career. His first game he played in the forward pocket, but certainly not helping his owners in KFC SuperCoach, and I don't know that it's really doing the Tigers much good either if you look at their results. So hopefully Dimmer gets the message there, and that might turn his form around a little bit. Phantom Kyle here says he's locked into getting Stewart, and we like that. And then he's got one trade left after that, but he would still have Hewitt on his bench. He's got Treloar, who's got a few injury niggles, but you probably just have to hold those guys, wouldn't you? They might be back next week. Hewitt might play. Treloar might play this week.
Yeah, I think Wehr to Stewart is a good move, and you push Hewitt to the bench and get him as a loophole potentially down the track. Luke Beveridge said this morning they think Treloar will be okay, then followed up with if he's not right, they won't play him. Thanks, Bevo. That's obviously how it works. But I think they're pretty confident, like Dan Begala mentioned, but who knows what Luke Beveridge is thinking. Elijah Holland was pretty good last week, so I think you're probably okay there with one trade. If Treloar misses, it's on the minor end, it sounds like, so it's not going to be a multiple week. If he misses, it probably just around 20. So, yep, Kyle, I'd hold, make that first move and then hold.
What about Dan Begala? There's just looking at the likely ins for GWS this week. There's 3 or 4 pretty good names. Whitfield, I think. Tom Green, maybe. Who knows? Perryman, Hogan, I think. Is there any danger you think Jacob Wehr could be dropped? I mean, that would send panic through the SuperCoach community if the teams come out tonight and there's no Jacob Wehr.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I watched the game, obviously, as a Carlton fan. There's a scene in Austin Powers, and I think they trick Christian, whatever that guy is, not Christian Bale, it's another Christian from back in the days with Tom Cruise. And Austin Powers uses this orange sherbet thing, and he goes, orange sherbet. And then the guard lets him through. And that's exactly what Jacob Wehr did against Carlton. He ran into the 450, stole an orange sherbet wearing an orange GWS kit, and then kicked a bottom from 52. And it was one of the best goals I've seen all year from a little fella.
Oh, wow.
But that was all he did for the game. He didn't touch it thereafter. He didn't touch it before. He had it about 7 times. But when he did have it, he was effective. I think he'll be dropped. That's my opinion. But look, he didn't do much. He really didn't do much. And he'd always have a few other players you suspect to come back. But that was another reference to a weird movie. But if that does happen, it probably helps with my decision making because I would be forced to move Huey. And like in that example, I wouldn't be afraid to cut Wehr down to a 102k player and maybe take him up to Stewie from there and keep the cash for Bont in the next few weeks. But there's so much stuff to happen at the selection table tonight. Treloar is probably the linchpin of what happens with all my moves because he will force me to use 2 trades. But look, I'm pretty confident that Wehr won't play this week. Just didn't get enough of it. He had a great goal, was on 55 at halftime, and then finished the game with 60. So wasn't the best second half, unfortunately.
If Perryman and Whitfield both play, then you can almost count on it. I think I agree with Dan Bagala.
And Andrew Hawks in the comments is Christian Slater, so he's obviously seen it. Great film.
So, Phantom, if people don't have bench cover, Wehr is out, and that leaves you with a donut. You pretty much have to trade Hewitt then. But would you, like in my position, would you say you probably just want to use the one, and that means getting a Doherty type rather than using both trades to try and get up to Tom Stewart?
Yeah, I'd do that.
Although I do have Buku Kamas.
The likelihood you're going to come out overall better, I think. Yes, you could get away with getting Stewart and then not having any troubles, but I think Doherty, a couple of big scores, not going to be far off Tom Stewart. Tom Stewart's been very good, averages some big numbers down there at the category, as we know, but Sam Doherty's a great scorer in his own right too. Only takes one big score from him and maybe a slow start potentially from Tom Stewart in his first game back where it could even out. So Tom Stewart's a great scorer, but again, I think we're getting potentially a little bit carried away with people saying he might be much better. I don't think there's much. He's not that much better a player than Sam Doherty in terms of SuperCoach. Although his numbers have been pretty good this year, Doherty can match him. I think, especially over 4 rounds.
I think to that analysis that you did earlier, fans, like let's just say hypothetically he scores 120 points per week for the next 4 weeks. It means he scores 480 points. What do we think Doc scores in that time? 430, 420? He's only 50 points off. So if you keep that trade, like L's leaning towards, I can feel it now. What if he gets a donut for 2 weeks and he covers those donuts with a premium and then gets 120 points both those weeks? So net effect, he's actually up about 150, 200 points. So that's the way I look at it. I go, okay, Stewie, I've got FOMO. I feel really bad watching you play and dominate, but look, I don't care. I've got a bird in the hand that will help him later on in the season, I suspect.
Yeah. I mean, the worry is that, you start thinking Stewart's going to score 160 in each of those games and that puts him, a long way ahead. But, reality is it's probably unlikely to score that highly for over a 4-month stretch. He'd probably put out one score like that, but then, I think I'm probably a bit biased by the fact that I got him after the buys and I didn't really want to have to trade him out, and so now I'd love to get him back. But I mean, even in those 2 weeks, he got that 160 against the Tigers, but the week before, I think he only scored 95 against the Eagles. So, over a 4-week period, it's probably not going to turn out to be a huge difference. Dan Batten, you've gone down the road of keeping trades towards the end. What do you think of Bill's question here about our mate Abdul, who we know has had 0 trades for about 3 or 4 weeks? And he's in number 1 position overall on the overall rankings. Is there any chance he can stay there with no trades left? I mean, I think he's got, I'm pretty sure he's got Hewitt, so he's going to be playing a rookie there for however long Hewitt's out. Josh Kelly missed last week, but he should be back. There were some whispers about Will Brodie too. I haven't heard anything more about that, so hopefully that doesn't amount to anything. Would you be backing Abdul at this stage?
Oh, I hope he does win because he's obviously such a character. We had him on the podcast and, a very, very raw and authentic sort of guy, just, pretty much just complaining about all the trades he got wrong for the year, and he's still first. So I imagine if he had stuffed him up. But no, I do hope he can hang on. We've seen other players hold on for 4 or 5 weeks. He has had no trades for a few weeks, though, and I did see on Twitter he was saying about how he's probably going to be losing 50 points this week from Hewitt and potentially Darcy Cameron if Grundy does come back. But he may have a stroke of luck there if Grundy's in the VFL and Mason Cox is ill as well. So he's sort of in doubt to play this week. We'll find out with teams obviously tonight, but I hope he does. Obviously, I'd say the odds are against him, but who knows? The other players in the top 10 probably don't have too many trades either. We had JP on a few weeks ago, and I think he was down to to bare bones in terms of trades as well. He's a little bit better than Abdul, but obviously the gap is starting to lessen slightly. But fingers crossed he can, because it would be a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does have some decent bench cover. He's swinging players all over the place. I know he was talking about he got Harry Himmelberg as his sort of bench cover loop player, but he's going so well that he's got to put him on the field and probably use Josh Dunkley as his cover because Dunkley's really struggling for some reason the last few weeks. But what's your take on that, Phantom? And actually, Corey, one of our regulars, has asked a question too about he could trade Hewitt to potentially Tim English. So you've got sort of a few different lines here to potentially bring someone in. I mean, English, I got him a few weeks ago and he was pretty average for a couple of weeks, maybe still feeling the effects of that Braden Preuss induced concussion, but he was really good last week, back up to 20 plus disposals, 10 marks, a couple of goals. So if you could get him in for Hewitt, would that be a possibility?
Yep, I like it. I've got him too, and as you mentioned, very good last week, and we saw at the start of the year how high his ceiling is, so I don't mind that. Just on Josh Dunkley, last week I said it wasn't the time to trade, but obviously came out with another disappointing score. But I think even on the edge of the Bulldogs on-ball brigade, which he is at the moment, spent 61% of game time forward last week, his highest percentage since round 9. But he still finished with 25 touches, 6 marks and 6 tackles. It was really the 8 clangers total. I think he had a few of them early as well. So he's playing catch-up for most of the year. But that game time forward since round 9, but in round 9, the second highest forward percentage for the year, scored 118. So he's still a good scorer, a proven scorer, even when he's not in that first choice mix. So very much a luxury trade for mine. Of course, if you've got the Himmelberg on the bench or someone, and then you could put Dunkley on the bench as an emergency, I'd do that. But I wouldn't go trading him out yet. I think you're better off you're trading your Jaden Shorts, your Jack Chris, as we mentioned earlier. I think Josh Dunkley still has 1 or 2 good scores left in him.
The other one, interesting one on English, but this weekend too, is be interesting to see what the Cats do with their rucks, given Reece Stanley's out for a few weeks. So
it's his boy.
Exactly. So whether they bring in John Siegler type, or I think they've got a young kid, don't they, Toby Conway, that they've been looking to debut. So it might be English versus the first gamer.
I think English owners will be hoping it's Toby Conway who makes his debut, because I think English could eat him alive out there at GMHBA. But they probably would just throw Blitzars in there. He's been playing everywhere so far this year, which could hopefully release Bont, because he has been looking to tag the best midfielder, and I'm sure Dan McGullough wouldn't be liking that if he's free. And then Anthony Nicol, just speaking of Begala, he's only 313 behind the Phantom. He's sliding down the hill quicker than some of the people at Splendor over the weekend. He's going to be, might be A over T soon enough. So yeah, I'd like to see that. But Begala's sliding a little bit as well. So
yeah, got 100 points
who
back
do you
on.
think comes out on top, Al? I mean, we've seen he did, but only the one trade left, so he's looking slim. What do you think the final rankings will be from SuperCoach TV, Al?
Jeez, that's putting me right on the spot. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a season like this where I started so badly, but then I've literally gone up in the rankings every single week since round 1. But I'm worried that's going to, I'm starting to run out of trades. I'd love to get Tom Stewart. I could run into a brick wall pretty quickly if I use up those trades and then cop some donuts. So a lot of it just could come down to injuries, and I think you're in a great position, Dan, with 3 trades left. That really gives you an edge potentially over the rest of us. So I don't know, but I just hope keep moving up. If I can finish in the top, a couple of thousand, I'd be pretty happy with that after my start. But we probably should get onto some captain talk, because I think might take a little bit longer than most weeks, because there's just so many great options this weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
Where are you turning, Phantom, for a VC or a captain this week?
Just quickly, I'd be happy for the GOAT, the people's GOAT, the people's champ, Dan McGullough, to pass me. We wouldn't be happy if Dan Button
or Tim
Mitchell to pass me. So that's my rivalries are clicked on in KFC SuperCoach at the moment. Happy for the people's champ to pass me, but got a close eye on Dan Button. Captains, probably have to go Clary, I think, VC on Friday night, even over there in Perth. I scored 7. He had my captain last week, scored 78.5, and then just was a bit quiet. Didn't have any influence in the last quarter as Bont and the Dogs went nuts. 74 points, I think, thereabouts for Bont in the last quarter. So Clary had no influence there. But I think on Friday night, Clayton Oliver, I think you just have to have him VC. I'll be doing that. Touk Miller against the Eagles on Sunday could be the one, I think, to fall back on. Where you could, if you can, you could VC Touk potentially into Lachie Neale against the Tigers straight after. Quick turnaround. But I think you probably got to get Touk Miller, who scored, 335 plus scores in the past month, I think it is. So probably got to have him in there somehow. But for me, Clary into Touk.
What about Dan Begala? You don't have him, but the Bont is the number one. Sorry to rub it in, but he's the number one scoring player in SuperCoach in the last 3 weeks. He probably has to be an option against the Cats, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like it's like rubbing salt in my wounds. It's a short squeeze, like the that stock savage, in the US. No, it's an absolute short squeeze. Like here's my boy. We've got the same sort of chassis, 6'4", both cover the ground, very like gallop sort of way about it. But he's a bit better in the contest. But I've had him every year pretty much for the last 5 years. And when Butters went down, he was in my team on Monday. By Tuesday, he was out because of English's injury. So it's sliding doors, and it hurts watching him have those last quarters where he's heroic. He just straps the Bulldogs onto his wide shoulders and he carries them home. But I didn't realise we're in the Comedy Cellar today in New York. Dan Batten is just dropping dimes like left, right, and centre. I just can't believe it. I'm
trying to learn from you. I'm thrown by the orange sherbet. It's just.
Well, I've got a mate that we always, whenever anyone offers candy on the footy field, we always send that meme to one another. We just love it. So and it was just funny because he was a GWS player wearing an orange kit. So it was just symbolic of orange sherbet.
Maybe a little bit of a stretch. I was wondering where it was going, but I loved it.
But I'm thinking, with the VCCs, I'm thinking I actually might hold fire till Sunday like fans, but actually start with Touk and roll into Neale or Zach Merritt against North Melbourne. North Melbourne's got COVID running through them. They don't have an assistant coach. They don't have an actual coach. Zach Merritt is absolutely on it. They don't have a recruiting staff. But effectively, Zach Merritt in that third quarter against Collingwood, I think he piled on 70 points. Like he was just inside 50, goal assist. So it was like the bloke's in a real high ilk of form at the moment, and that's what I like to see. North don't have a tagger. So many points get bled out of that inner city circle that they're in. But we do know Neale has an amazing record against Richmond. They don't tag at the G. They need to win at the G because they've got a really poor record there, and they will not do anything finals unless they win there. But Touk is probably my VC, given Clary, last time they played Freo, well, guess what happened at halftime? He was 80 at halftime, and James Aish decided to slot himself next to him for the rest of the game, and I barely think he got to 115. So I'd suspect Long Meyer or Long Muir, like whichever Long it is, we'll put Aish on him from the get-go. That's my thoughts. Also wrong.
What about Lachie Neale? Dan, you would have seen him go big against the Tigers a few times. I think he had 50 disposals against us a couple of years ago.
He loves playing against Essendon. Right, he also loves playing against Richmond. So I think that's going to be my backup captain. I don't have Clayton Oliver, obviously. So I'm sort of hoping for that James Aish tag. But now that I've said that, he's going to score 170. So after the slightly down week last week, I'm probably going to VC Laird. He's just been so consistent all year. Probably can bank a 140 from him. And we know the Blues, they tend to just go all out attack. They're not really a tagging side. So probably going to go Laird into Neale, but love the Miller VCC option as well, and Zach Merritt. So you're spoilt for choice this week, really.
Yep, Lachie Neale. Plenty of points up for grabs late in the game as well against the Tigers. So Lachie Neale could be.
There tends to be. Usually from about halfway through the last quarter when Richmond.
Yeah.
You think they're
I had to say it.
Yes. No. True. I mean, the other one, like if you had Jack Steele against the Hawks, that is another really nice option, but not too many people probably have him. And Callum Mills against the Giants.
Wits against West Coast.
Luke Parker has a fantastic record against the Giants too. Scored a couple of massive scores. So plenty of good choices this week, and it's going to be definitely one of those weeks where you want to be watching your head-to-head matchups and try and keep an eye on who your opponent has as captain, and if they taken a VC score, and do you think you can win, or if you're coming from behind, whether you throw it on a Merritt in the last game of the round or something like that. So it's going to be a big week, obviously, but we need a zinger of the week. There's been plenty today. I want to give it to Dan for his orange sherbet. But usually it is supposed to come from one of the viewers. So I think we had one up a second ago, didn't we? In reference to that.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you bring something back from Splendor, maybe?
No. It's been Regala, I think.
Yeah, I think
no,
it's
exactly.
that Powell's thing because that's just I've never
No,
actually
I know. I
cigarette.
thought that, I might have just passed it over.
I've never had a cigarette in my life, so that's what I'm like. But effectively, I've just
he's
got
more
this
of a vaping
brain
man.
that can pull these things out really quickly, and that's the example I had there. So I'm not a movie buff. I'm not a movie buff, but I remember great moments, and that's one of my highlights of my movie career. That one.
We might have to find that meme and put it out there.
Oh, absolutely.
What you're talking about.
I think I put the link in our private chat.
Yeah,
so
get the link out there. Let everyone see it. That was effectively Jacob Wehr. He was basically Austin Powers in that scene.
Very good. Any final words, Phantom?
Too good.
Well, if you want to get actual Supercoach advice, not just comedy, check out our websites as well. So it's been a pretty good episode, but plenty of actual advice. heraldson.com.au, AdelaideNow.com.au, Code Sports as well. Get your subscription for $1.
Yeah, I like that. Very good. All right, thanks everybody. Good luck everyone in the first round of finals. Hopefully we're all still alive next week, and we'll talk to you all again soon.